free men need to be able to protect their families. It's really sad to see people hurt, livelihoods destroyed, even homes destroyed, just to make a political point. Free men take action when churches face heartbreaking attacks. And while cowards stand idle, free men run towards the sound of gunshots when children are in danger. I'm so thankful for free men who stand ready with the tools of liberty.
Hey y'all, welcome to Cross Politic on the Fight Laugh Feast Network. It is a Tuesday. It's Valentine's Day.
Yeah. That's my Valentine's
cupcake.
Cupcake from Mama Wrench?
No, from Mama Proffer.
Oh, Mama Proffer.
Hey, our producer's mama came in with all these cupcakes and gave me a sugar headache. Pastor Toby Chuck Knox, I'm the water boy. It's good to be with you. And we have David Bahnsen
I gotta put my glasses
on the show
on.
because we're about to get real. Because David, you may not know this, but is a Christian nationalist.
I didn't say that, David.
I didn't say that.
Nothing says Valentine's like David Bahnsen. The other thing that you ought to be thinking about on Valentine's Day is our Fight Laugh Feast magazine. Our Fight Laugh Feast magazine it's quarterly, and it packs a punch like a 21-year Balvenie, no ice.
Or Valentine's cupcake.
Or a Valentine's cupcake loaded with
sugar.
icing, like 6 layers of icing. Yeah. We don't water down our icing. So why would we water down our theology? I just mixed up a bunch of metaphors there. I love it. Order a yearly subscription today for yourself and then send it to your true love, who's been drinking lukewarm evangelical Kool-Aid.
Like Joe Biden.
True love. Every quarter, we promise quality food for the soul, wine for the heart, some Red Bull for turning over tables. Our magazine includes cultural commentary, a psalm of the quarter, recipes for feasting, laughter, sprinkled throughout the glossy page. And they're glossy, for real, and more. Sign up today.
They actually got to sign up today because in March, we're delivering the first quarterly issue. Yeah. Ken Ham, Dr. Gordon Wilson, it's Politics of Six-Day Creation. It's looking forward to our Fight Laugh Feast conference in October.
Does David Bahnsen get an issue of our magazine? Do you get our magazine?
I do.
Oh,
yeah. Once you're an author, he should be getting them all now. But he wrote in the first one of the first seasons of it and everything.
I was just making sure because
I did. Thanks for reading that, Toby. I really appreciate it.
That was my favorite article of them all.
It was on Christian nationalism.
All I remember is you were defending Christian nationalism.
Yeah, that was it.
David Bahnsen is American portfolio manager, author, television commentator, and one of our favorite guests.
Say less.
He's been on television a lot recently, too.
Man.
Yeah.
They love him.
David,
more than me.
David, thanks for coming back on Cross Politic.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me, as always. Love being with you guys. Wish we could do it more. And yes, Gabe, I saw you are a budding television star yourself. My best recommendation is stick to radio.
I told you.
Fair enough. Fair enough. A voice for radio and a face for radio.
Well, we don't know about the voice.
Okay, but at least the face. All right.
That's real brotherly love right there. Just iron sharpening iron. Just the wounds of a friend and all the rest of it.
Classic Bahnsen.
I told Gabe I wanted him to get you back on if we could sometime soon. When I actually saw, you shared, I don't know which
my press release basically.
Press release on Gabe's recent victory in federal court, basically rejecting the city of Moscow's attempt to defend their insanity in riding roughshod over Gabe and the Bonnet's First and Fourth Amendment rights, protesting the mask mandates, and you shared it, and you said the classical liberal order did right by you, brother. You deserved this vindication, my friend. And of course, grateful for the kudos and the share and everything. Yeah. But I just thought, you kind of gave us this loaded tweet, and I said, we need to unpack this some more. What do you mean by the classical liberal order? How did that do right by Gabe? What did you mean by that?
Well, the thing is that I really consider you guys friends, and I love being on with you. And I believe we're going to co-labor together for the kingdom for decades to come. And yet, I think you guys know what the classical liberal order is, right?
Well, I think we have some ideas, but I also think...
I want you to shoot straight with me as to what you're asking, because I think it's a very fair question, and I'm here to offer any clarifications and whatnot. But if the question is, why would I say the liberal order in that case did right by Gabe? Mm-hmm. Or is the question, what do we mean by liberal order? I think those are two different questions. And I really do believe that what's going on right now, by the way, I wish I didn't have to say the classical liberal order. I wish I could just say the liberal order. Mm-hmm. But about 100 years ago, it became necessary for us to pretend like we didn't know what the liberal order was anymore, and that the word liberal didn't mean free, and that the lefties or progressives or enemies of the gospel and enemies of the liberal order, that they got that word. So we said, okay, we'll keep classical liberal. We'll allow that to happen. And at some point we started calling it conservative. And this surrender of vocabulary bothers me. But I already know that we operate from the like-minded presuppositions. We operate from a like-minded worldview. And so the question is to what the liberal order is versus why I think the liberal order did right by Gabe. I just think those are two different questions.
Yeah, actually, I would here just for me, because what you just said, what you nailed it for me. When I think liberal, I'm not thinking the same way.
I'm thinking 1960s, 70s. Like, I'm so influenced by what that liberal order meant, or what we meant by classical.
The what? The 1960s
1960s and 70s.
Like
this,
free sex,
this classical,
and drugs.
This liberal. Yeah, well, I mean, like, kind of how the Republicans and Democrats were trying to meet in this neutral liberal order, where like old classical liberals right now are fighting new liberals right now, and so this
like gays against groomers.
Yeah, but even feminist against new order feminists,
right?
You know, so I'm heavily influenced by. So when I imported more of my thoughts on liberalism than into it from the 60s and 70s than where you're pointing to, 100 years ago, Edmund Burke and that kind of genre.
Well, and really it's Western civilization.
Yeah.
I mean, what we're talking about with the liberal order, and we didn't just surrender vocabulary, but we certainly did that. Yeah. And my guess is if we hadn't done that, we wouldn't have to have the conversation.
Yeah.
Now, your guys' pastor, Doug Wilson's written some great stuff on this lately of affirming a belief in the liberal order and classical liberalism as traditionally understood, and very much wanting to see it fortified around distinctly Christian principles and institutions that undergird it and protect it.
Right.
So there's not even an ounce of daylight between me and Wilson on this. Not even a little.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. The term liberal today, I recognize is a reference to someone of a left-wing politics.
Yeah.
And the term conservative is supposed to mean someone of right-wing politics. But then people will say that the Trumpy folks were far right, as if like they're more conservative than me when they spend $7 trillion in national debt in 4 years. Or are the most pro-LGBT presidency of our lifetime.
That's right. That's right.
Yep.
So I don't think that's far right. What it's become is a term about temperament. That far left means you go try to burn, you act like a French revolutionary for Occupy Wall Street, and far right means you act like a French revolutionary for some form of nationalism or populism or Trumpism. I reject both definitions out of hand. The word liberal is a reference to a free society, and liberalism, the notion of classical liberalism that we've now adopted as the term for 100 years, has its roots in the very founding principles of Western civilization. Principles that any worldview-minded Christian should be defending with every ounce of breath in their body.
So do you think like this whole conversation around Christian nationalism, to me, it seems like there's a lot of angst there. And that
a lot of what there?
Angst.
Angst.
teenage angst. I don't know.
Yeah, I thought you said eggs.
They're all scrambled.
That's where those
They're all
went.
scrambled. Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of angst. Yeah.
But I think it's coming from people wanting to ground, and I'm coming at this from Canon Press, published Christian Nationalism by Stephen Wolfe. And so I think there's real substance there in the conversation, but I also think the conversation is being driven by a lot of angst of people who are trying to anchor their Christian identity in a nation that has gone crazy and has lost its identity. Is that fair?
Well, let me ask you a question. If America was not acting the way she is acting right now, would it be better to root our Christian identity in our country?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
I think
He's saying that right now there are people that want to root their identity in this country, and yet the country's acting crazy. And what I'm saying is, should Christian identity, which I think is a very simple term. I don't mean there's not a trick question.
yeah.
Should our Christian identity be rooted in the nation of our national origin?
In part, yes.
Now, I will be honest with you guys. I meant that rhetorically. I did not mean that to be a hard question.
Well, and I would say, no.
Sorry, it's Valentine's Day.
Yeah, it's hard. I would say our nation's identity should be rooted in Christianity, and that's what,
I'm asking of our identity as Christians.
Can I answer that? I would say
yes, in part.
Yeah, I actually would say that not my primary identity. No,
But part of it, because we're rooted in time and space.
Yeah. So in other words, it's an Obama answer about American exceptionalism. Yes, just like the Greeks are exceptional and the Belgians are exceptional, like they're rooted in time and space too. And so, in other words, the answer is yes for everybody, which means kind of not the same thing, right?
Well, I guess I'm not sure if I'm following you, but I'm thinking of like the end of Revelation. You have all the nations, the kings of the earth bringing the glory of the nations into the New Jerusalem. So,
right.
So the identity, our ultimate identity and allegiance is Christ, obviously.
And when someone says your Christian identity, do you think they mean your ultimate identity?
right. So that's why I'm saying absolutely not. My Christian identity is marked by baptism, primarily into the Christian faith, right?
And if you were born and still to this day living in a different country than America, would that be even a little bit different?
No, it would be primarily Christian.
Well,
but I'm not saying.
So your Christian identity is not rooted
in my national
your
identity.
national origin.
Correct.
But anything to do with soteriology.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you mean, but I guess that seems a little bit simplistic, though. I mean, I agree with that in terms of getting to heaven. Justification has nothing to do with
Nation.
anything on our part. It's God's grace, the righteousness of Jesus alone. But then we're saved as embodied creatures. We're saved
as a white person, as a black person,
time and space. And so, am I a Christian? Do you just mean in terms of justification, like getting to heaven, or do you mean what is God bringing to heaven? God is not just bringing my soul.
In fairness, Pastor Toby, I didn't use the term. Gabe said Christian identity.
Yeah.
And so I don't think I'm talking about justification or any salvific or soteriological context. I'm saying that the term Christian identity has you said it's simplistic because I think it is simple. Our Christian identity is us as creatures with an eternal destiny, rooted by creation in a plan God has for our life. Right. And there are some of us who are born in America and may leave America. Mm-hmm. And when we leave America, our Christian identity doesn't change.
Right.
Agreed.
And some of us may be born in another country and stay in another country, and they have an identity in Christ that isn't different than mine. And even though they're in one country, I'm in another. So the point you're making that I know what you mean. Like that's the whole thing that really frustrates me about the conversation at large, not with you guys, not with my brothers, but with people who I don't think are operating in good faith, is most people know exactly what the confusion is over and what the disagreement is in the rhetoric being used. There is a purposeful equivocation when someone is saying Christian nationalist as a context of where somebody lives versus what the term clearly means, your Christian identity as to how you are rooted to the Christ who saves. And us all believing that is completely irrespective of either national origin or national domicile, where we were born or where we choose to live later.
So then, David, can I ask the question then? Because I totally, when Gabe asked the question, I was like, there's a split there. I actually agree with you on that. But then as the liberal order in America and the nation is itself Christian, and if it is, what's wrong with wanting a Christian identity for a nation?
Nothing.
Right.
Well, the only thing that would be wrong is if you don't want every nation to be Christian.
Yeah, right. Right. Amen. Preach, preacher.
Kuiper.
So then, David, here's my question.
But see, brother, this is the heart of the matter. I want America to be a Christian nation so badly that I refuse to pollute the conversation.
I agree with you. But that's what my question is. So then, what's the difference then between what you see as Christian nationalism? Because I have just so you know, my cards on the table, I have some problems with it. I personally think Christian nationalism is kind of where Christianity goes to die, right? That's kind of my thoughts on it. Because the nationalism part is going to eat up the Christian part. We've kind of known that from history if you pay attention to it, right? So Christian nationalism comes in after you've kind of eroded Christianity. So that's just kind of my cards on the table. And I'm watching the whole game and I see the plays that are happening. So just so you know. But my question to you is, what is it that you see from Christian nationalism that's problematic with the Christian nation that is America?
Well, again, the vocabulary is important, and there is no question that one can say, I want to see the Christianization of America and define it as its institutions being broadly submissive to the authority of Christ. And that submissiveness to the lordship of Christ coming without any semblance of coercion.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so
I like
I have a non-statist view and aspiration for the Great Commission, a non-statist view of the cultural mandate. And I'm with Toby here. I live in a time and place. There's a context in history. Mm-hmm. And as a person who lives in America, who, by the way, has a particular and exceptionalistic fondness for America, believing in the principles of the Declaration and believing in much of the heritage, recognizing the national sins that stain us, and believing that the things that were right about America fixed some of those things that were wrong about America. Mm-hmm. And I have a path for what I would love to see America be, with no biblical certainty that what I hope for about America is God's plan for America.
Got it.
There's no identity for America as a predetermined part of God's redemptive plan.
Sure.
But luckily, my identity is in Christ, so I don't have to worry about that.
There we are.
But I care very much about America being a Christian nation. And if I lived in Mexico and with the doctrine of mortal proximity, I would want very much for Mexico to be a Christian nation, because obviously all of us are on the same page. So we want to baptize and make disciples of all the nations, plural.
Especially those children after they become. Amen.
Is there, maybe this is a question for either of you.
Okay.
Maybe I'm interviewing you too.
Oh, no.
Yoram Hazani has written the book, The Virtue of Nationalism.
Yeah.
Is there any virtue in? You said nationalism is where nations go to die.
From what I've been,
I'm curious if that's. I'm fully aware of all kinds of nationalisms that are just cancerous and toxic. Okay, we know that. But is nationalism always cancerous and toxic? Is there any virtue in nationalism?
David, you want to go first?
Well, I want you, Toby, because I want to be so completely gracious and hospitable. I want you to tell me what you're defining nationalism as, because I don't want to answer a question you're not asking.
Right. Well, I think some would make it almost synonymous with what is called patriotism. C.S. Lewis describes the love of one's nation, one's country, very beautifully in Four Loves. That would be. I'm thinking of that. I'm also thinking of...
Okay, but hold on real quick. Let's start. Do you mind if I interrupt?
Sure, go for it.
This is a great distinction, because if I believed nationalism equals patriotism, then everything changes.
Right.
Because my views of patriotism are different than my views of nationalism. And if when I was talking about nationalism, really talking about patriotism, then it would totally change the vocabulary, tenor, and philosophical underpinnings of the conversation. But because as a basic law of identity, demanding fidelity to English vocabulary, nationalism is not patriotism. They are not the same word and they don't mean the same thing.
Okay.
And so if that's what we meant was a definition of nationalism that we're redefining as patriotism, everything is different. But I am not defining nationalism as patriotism.
Okay. Well, so there's one. Second way, the way that Stephen Wolfe defines it is a nation knowing that it's a nation and acting for itself for its good before God. So it's knowing that you belong to a people and then acting for your own good in accordance with God's law. What's wrong with that definition?
Well, do I believe that all nations should act for their own good in accordance with God's law? I do. Now, of course, back to this trickery of President Obama with his cutesy answer about American exceptionalism. Do you know why I would not say America is exceptional the same way the Greeks are and the Belgians are, or whatever it was he said? Do you remember, by the way, what I'm talking about?
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
It was a way of saying he doesn't believe in American exceptionalism.
Okay.
Because if every country is exceptional, then no country is
Right.
exceptional.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And I believe in American exceptionalism because I actually do think there's something better about America than Greece and Belgium
Right.
and a whole lot of other countries. Somalia, for example.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how could you say that? Obviously, I'm not going to a racial or ethnic place. So what am I referring to? I'm referring to an idea. I define America as a country birthed out of an idea or a series of ideas in revolution from England that had become tyrannical, that was birthed in certain commitments embodied in our founding documents. First, the Declaration that stated our independence, and then the Constitution that provided a rule of government thereafter. And so there's exceptionalism in that. But if what we mean is that definition of nationalism, that we want a nation that is acting for its own good and doing so the glory of God, my answer would be the same Matthew answer from Great Commission. I would want that for every country.
Okay. So,
But do we believe that the country, that there is a particular Christian identity in America's history that needs to be preserved, Christian values that need to be rediscovered? I think that one could be totally averse to the word nationalism and believe all of that.
Sure.
And so that therefore we want us to ask, what is the controversy over if all we mean by nationalism is that we want a Christian nation?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I've got thoughts on that, but let me throw one more quote at you, just as for fun. I came across this. I told the guys yesterday I'm on a John Buchan kick. I don't know if you've ever read John Buchan. I am not. He's the Scottish Presbyterian godfather.
Oh, that explains it. I don't read Presbyterians.
Yeah. He died in like 1935. So he was the son of a Scottish Presbyterian pastor. But he's known for being the godfather of the spy thriller novel. He wrote like spy thriller novels based on World War I. Ian Fleming, James Bond, sort of based on that. But he's this Scottish Presbyterian and member of Parliament. Also, for a time, wrote like 34 volumes on World War I for British press, and then ended his career as the Governor General of Canada, the royal representative of Canada. Died in Canada in 1935. He has this quote where he actually just makes a distinction. I'm listening to a biography of him right now and came across this, and I thought I'm going to save this for David Bahnsen. He said, I believe as firmly as ever that a sane nationalism is necessary for all true peace and prosperity. So he sort of, denotes a sane nationalism is necessary for all true peace and prosperity. But I am equally clear that an artificial nationalism, which manifests itself in barren separatism and the manufacture of artificial difference, makes for neither peace nor prosperity. I thought that was a relatively intelligent take, but he's at least granting the possibility of a sane nationalism and saying even that's necessary for true peace, but also recognizes that there is such a thing as an artificial nationalism, which is full of barren separatism and artificial differences, which is going to cause all kinds of havoc.
Right.
Could you go in for some kind of distinction like that?
Yeah, you know what's interesting there is that when it isn't including the word Christian, you're talking about nationalism. Nationalism is more specific than patriotism, and Christian nationalism is more specific than nationalism. And my friend Rich Lowry, who's the editor of National Review, has been there in that position since Bill Buckley died 15 years ago, and is one of the most thoughtful conservatives in the country. And he wrote a book in defense of nationalism in the last several years. And to me, the whole book was essentially a semantics argument for patriotism, right? And when you talk about a nationalist, that you have to define who's in the nation. And that with the Christian nationalism debate, now we have to start defining who is part of the Christian nation. Does it include the people in the nation who are not Christians? And the definition that you provided a moment ago in this vision of a Christian nation I have allows for people to be part of the nation that are not yet Christianized, and therefore give a real burden to those of us in the church to evangelize. To evangelize institutions, to evangelize people, families, households, all of this sort of cultural transformation we believe in. And yet we do so to the people as part of the nation, not as outsiders looking in. And that becomes a sort of sphere sovereignty distinction. And that's where I'd rather hear this author you're quoting. I'd like to unpack better, if I'm comfortable with those semantics or not, around the sphere sovereignty of church and state. Because I believe that there is a right to excommunicate someone out of the church who is an unbeliever. And in the domain of the state, I don't believe there is a right to excommunicate, well, some might say execute too, out of the country, a person who's an unbeliever. And that sphere sovereignty and category distinction is so important to a real fruitful conversation.
Is your overarching concern with Christian nationalism that it sounds coercive?
Honestly, it is not my primary concern. I think it sounds much more incoherent than it sounds coercive.
Okay, hold on, David. I want to ask you got 10 more minutes to hang around, or do you got to run?
I'm fine. I devoted this time to you.
Oh, I can't wait.
If we're going to literally solve the future of the nation, then we need to take the time we're going to do.
You know what? We're going to do it in the backstage. So if you're single, get married. If you're married, have you some kids. If you have kids, go baptize them. Until tomorrow, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Go fight, laugh, and feast. We'll meet you in the backstage with David Bahnsen.
Maybe you should add baptize the nations somewhere in there.
Oh, yeah. Nations.
With a Z?
with lots of Z's.
Hey, David.
Home. It's where you build your legacy, where traditions are started, seeds are planted, meals are shared, and stories are told. We are Chris and Natalie Carpenter, owners of Story Real Estate, and our team of top agents helps people find homes in Moscow, Idaho, and around the country.
Have you thought about a move? Contact us to get connected with a top agent who shares your values and puts your family first. Or reach out to us about our Moscow relocation guide.
Wherever you're looking to go, we can help you find home. Call us at Story Real Estate or visit us at storyrealestate.com and start building your legacy.
Putting off writing that proposal again? Yeah, we've been there. Proposal writing can be tough. It takes work, and if you're not careful, you can set up your company for failure. Well, that's where we come in. Smart Pricing Table is an innovative application that focuses on, well, the pricing table. Instead of a static document and constant back and forth, our platform creates interactive proposals that empower your prospects. Not sure if something is needed? Make it optional. Have complicated services that vary? Let your customer do the work with line item upsells. Have reoccurring services? Easy peasy. With Smart Pricing Table, you can create attractive proposals quickly. And our system is built for reuse, so you can get out of that hamster wheel. Give your customers choice and close deals quickly with Smart Pricing Table.